Welcome to Timber&Terra. I'm Glenn, and I am back here again on my low road. Low road because elevation-wise, it's one of the lowest parts of my property. Where there's a small brook that feeds a pond that you may see me ride next to in other videos across the ford where the water just runs across the road. So when we were last here, I was finishing up pasture spruce. That's done. But since I have access to this road this winter, really nice access, when normally it doesn't freeze up enough because it's so wet, I thought I'd do some cleanup with some cedar and some other things such as saw logs to sell. So today's rather cold while I have this head sock or balaclava on. I'll probably lose it though once I get working, because I'll start getting warm. Temperature is like 8 degrees Fahrenheit, -6, -8 Celsius, something like that. So I do have a plan for some cedar, but this first stop actually is a white spruce. But I believe, in my opinion, that spruce is probably on its last days because the crown is very sparse. You can see a lot of branches with no needles on them, way up to the top. I'm not talking about these, but up to the top where the crown is. It's blocking this fir, which probably isn't a whole lot better, but you can see to the right hand side of it are some cedar. And the cedars have some light, but I'll get a bit more light with this down. Plus, I might as well take it down now while I have access to the road. And while this is still a sound tree, I did cut the notch out, the felling notch, and it looks like nice sound wood. My plan is to drop it between that ugly looking red spruce and this more brown bark fir to the left. A little bit of a tight window, but if I can do that, then whatever there is for a crown up there will be off the road and it'll minimize my cleanup effort. Well, that went remarkably well, actually. Luck is starting off good today. I guess I could have left a little bit less of a hinge. That would have made hammering the wedges in either unnecessary or a bit less necessary. So it fell right where I wanted to. So the purpose of this is 16.5-foot logs. I do see this little crook here. So what I might do, cut the first 16-foot log, maybe waste this little crook and then start another 16-foot log that way. It's unlikely I'll get 3 logs out of it anyhow. The minimum I need on the small end is 5-inch diameter. So I've mostly limbed this up. I've gotten the logs that I'm going to get out of it, but before I trim up the top, I just wanted to show you sort of the condition of this particular tree. The wood is nice and sound. I did end up wasting this a little bit here. A nice 16-foot log there, which we have 6 inches of trim, so it's really 16.5 feet. That little, well, it probably started out as being a double top, and then one of the tops died off, or just a misfigured branch which died, caused that little crook. So I started another log here. I got one additional 16-foot log, which I cut right there. If I hadn't have wasted that, there's a small chance I could have gotten a third log, which would have been up around here, very close to that 5-inch minimum diameter. But that's the way it is. I'm not worried about that. I would rather provide good quality logs than to strangle out the last $5 to $10 of a tree. So you can see here up close, I think the other indication that this is not the healthiest tree is that these needles are very short and small. You can see how sparse they are. Is a better indication of what a healthy needles should look like. A bit longer, deeper green, bluish green. These are sort of a yellowish green. But it's nice to have this mess off from the road. It did have some dead branches in the road that I needed to throw off to the side, but that's not a big deal. So I cut this up. It just lays on the ground. It'll eventually rot. The more you cut it up, the quicker it rots. The quicker the value of that organic matter becomes. So that's why we do that, or that's why I do that. So I'll take care of this. We'll hitch up these 2 logs, head that way. I want to bring these out to the field where I have another collection, or a collection of other 16-foot logs for sale. I think there's at least 1 or 2 other roadside trees like this one that I intend to cut. But actually my primary purpose here was to gather some cedar, and I'll talk about the cedar market in a bit. But here's an example. Those 2 trees there, they're leaning quite hard. Probably not something that I just soon leave in the forest. And there's another bunch just on the front side of the tractor, similar to that, but worse. They're really leaning hard into a tree. They may still grow, but then they're not going to be upright. They're damaging other trees, and their stems, I think, will eventually start to sort of curl because of the weight that they're growing under, and generally not be a good log. So my next target is this rather large balsam fir. And the issue I have with this is it's probably old because it's very large. Fir generally on my property don't get this large. So if it's that big, it's probably in its senior years of living. The crown looks fine, the needles look dark and full. But the other issue I have is this, you can see this crack. So I'm afraid that at some point the wind or something else might take this down, and if it does, who knows what damage it'll do, because it's leaning. You can see it's leaning hard that way, sort of leaning hard that way, and there's these cedar trees just like this all over the place. So if I can take this down now and sort of control where the damage is, or maybe even avoid any damage, then I'll do that. I'm guessing the bottom probably 8 or 10 feet are not going to be any good, either because of that seam or just because, I mean, you can see how curvy it is, so I may not get a straight enough log until up there. So my plan is, what I think I can do, if I can cut a higher stump, like almost chest level, fell it that way, it'll rub against this cedar and fall against those I'm pretty sure are red spruce, just based on the color of the bark. And these are leaning, they've been uprooted, in part probably because of a disturbance here making the road. So the western wind probably just sort of leaned them over. So I'm going to take all these 3 down. This one is big enough to make a log. It certainly has that 5-inch diameter, 16 feet up. But I'll have to take it down first. It does have a fair amount of limbs, but they're really not that big. Even though it's a red spruce, I think it is sort of marginal as far as what you might call a pasture spruce. Certainly you get up there, the branches are a bit more numerous and perhaps even larger. But if I don't take these down, what I think that tree might do is hit this and slide into the road, and then again cause me a mess to clean up. But if I can have that felled right here in this open area, that would be perfect. I was right here a couple of videos ago. I cut down a pasture spruce there and a small spruce here. I think I called that wolf tree red maple, because that's what almost all those big ugly looking trees are, is red maple, but that one actually is white ash, I'm pretty sure. I did correct that on the video and the text, but I initially called it wrong. So let's take these guys down and evaluate what I can get for a log on that one, if anything, and then tackle the big guy. Well, successfully taken down, but as you can see, this is not going to make any sort of a log. So I'll just cut it up into pieces, throw it off the road, and let's see if we have a clear shot with this, the bigger fir tree that I want to take. Yeah, so thinking I want to fell it basically right where we're standing. Should split those two cedars, obviously one to the left, one to the right. The branches, though, you know, will certainly bend over, may do some damage to those cedars. But we'll see what happens. Alright, now this will be interesting. This sort of a notch is called a Humboldt, commonly done on the west coast. I do it occasionally when I have a large stump that I need to cut large for some other reason, so that it doesn't take away from any usable wood here. I mean, the tree itself looks pretty sound. I don't know what this is, how far it goes in, if there's any rot around it. But as I mentioned, there's quite a curvature, so I'll probably have to start any logs, probably way up there. Well, let's hope that it rubs against this harmlessly, falls to the left side of that fir, which is leaning just a bit. Well, I really couldn't be more happy than how that turned out. It did take some branches off that. Did clip some branches off that fir. But boy, good as I could have hoped for. So I'll cut this stump down to a more reasonable level. But whatever this was, it does look like it had some rot associated with it just in the center. So as you can see that, between the crook there, which is probably 10, maybe 12 feet up, and the rot there, the bottom part of this is just going to be junk. So as long as the rot goes away, probably start cutting logs about there where it looks like it's relatively straight. Well, other than getting rid of a potential problem in the future where I can't control what this does if it gets blown over, it was a bit of a bust. So this rot that probably initiated in that seam, it might have been a lightning strike, it might have been who knows what. But this rot here in the center, you can see that brownish. It's still rather solid because it's frozen probably with a hatchet. But to me it's obvious that it's rot, and it just never cleared up. And I could tell my luck was probably going to run out, because normally if that sort of butt rot's going to clear up, you'll see every foot or two, and these are basically 2 feet long sections I cut, you'll see it noticeably get smaller and smaller, but it did not. Oh well, there's light for those 1, 2, 3, 4 cedar, which hopefully will enjoy that. I have a liability which is no longer there, so that's good. Gotta look at the bright side. And you can probably tell it started to snow. We are supposed to get a snowstorm today. Not a huge storm as far as accumulation, but it's supposed to be quick and heavy. I was hoping I would get at least one more tree down before I called it quits, because when it snows hard, it's just not fun being out here. I'm glad I don't do this for a living. This is only for enjoyment. Only for a hobby. So I'm going to continue. I think there's one close to the road. If I can find it, I'll take it down. If not, I guess we'll just call it good with those 2 logs. All right, so this was the next one that I had eyed. You can see there's all kinds, similar to the other tree. If I'm going to get anything, it's going to be a log that starts way up there. There's really nothing wrong with this tree. It's not, I just noticed it because it's right next to the road and it's just useless. So it's growing next to this spruce, white spruce I think, and cedar on the back side of it. So it's leaning heavy that way, so I don't have much of a choice as to where to fell it. And the other thing is, it's such a light tree, if I try to fall it, squeeze it between a couple of those trees, it could be hung up. And I just soon not mess with trying to drag it down with a cable, so I'm actually going to drop it probably close to my tractor at the expense of having to do a little bit of cleanup on the top end. So it could be another bust, we'll see. And because I'm cutting the stump up higher, this actually was, I think, a logging scar. I think I see some indications of scraping, which would be the chains on the skidder, back when I had the commercial cut done about 12 years ago. So this is another Humboldt cut or wedge or notch or hinge. So that's all you need here is a space, so when the tree falls, the hinge stays intact. If you don't have much of a notch here, then when the tree falls, it'll break the hinge off, and then you don't have any control as to where the tree goes. So it doesn't matter whether the notch or the triangle is up here or down there, but... All right, well, let's drop it before the snow gets too heavy and clear out of here. All right, well, I figured my luck would run out at some point, so it wedged itself between a couple trees there, but that little one to the right is no big deal. I'll just cut that down. It should fall into the road. Well, there was nothing salvageable in that tree, that log. This was a rotten spot. Probably 25 feet up. A little bit of rot there. It actually cleared up. In fact, I probably could have gotten the log from there up had it been large enough in diameter, but it was not. Then there was another a wound of some sort here. Actually not as bad a rot as I would have figured, but you probably lose almost half the diameter with that rot, basically only that. And I don't know how well modern sawmills can detect that and orient it so that that becomes waste, you know, and they could cut out, you know, a 4x4 or whatever they would want to get out of that. So another bust, but another win for my property management. Much cleaner up there. Not that this tree needs a lot more light, but although that cedar probably could use some. At some point that spruce will probably come down. But right for now it's healthy. The snow is picking up, so I think I'm going to end it here. I will clean up the road before I leave and drop those 2 logs off in the field before I head back to the house. Obviously this is a shorter video, but I appreciate your hanging tough for this one, and I hope to see you for the next video. Thanks, I appreciate it.